There is a kind of silence that a narcissist can never understand, let alone endure. A silence that doesn't come from anger, isn't a tactic, and isn't meant to manipulate or punish. It's a silence born from awakening, from seeing through everything, and ultimately choosing peace over continuing to fight someone who has no desire to heal. When a super empath chooses no contact, the narcissist's inner world begins to crack. Not because they lost someone who loved them, but because they lost the mirror that once reflected back their sense of worth. They didn't just lose a source of supply, they lost something rare and irreplaceable. Someone who once saw them in both their brokenness and emptiness, and still stayed. But that person, that was you, walked away. No accusations, no explanations. No need to prove who was right or wrong. You simply closed the door and never opened it again. To a narcissist, that's unacceptable. In their mind, you were the one who never leaves, the forgiver, the fighter, the one who stays until the bitter end. So when you cut off all contact without leaving an exit door, they aren't just stunned. They're in panic, but they'll never let you see that. Instead, they'll pretend nothing happened. They'll paint a picture of a perfectly fine life, post happy photos, show off someone new, smile like you never existed. But behind the filtered facade is a mind slowly unraveling, a growing fear of being forgotten, creeping in day by day. And that's what makes the no contact of a super empath a years-long obsession for the narcissist. Not because you left a void, because you took with you the only real light they ever had, the light of truth, patience, and love they'll never be able to replicate. In today's video, we're going to explore why the silence of a super empath is so powerful, and what really happens inside the narcissist's mind after you disappear completely. Each layer of thought, each desperate strategy, each psychological fracture, and most importantly, why they'll never be able to forget you, even if they'll never admit it. A narcissist doesn't live in reality. They exist in a universe of their own, built on illusion and control. In that world, you're not a separate human being with your own emotions and boundaries. You're an extension of them, a mirror to reflect their sense of worth. Someone chosen not to be loved, but to be controlled. That's why, even when you're hurting, crying, even saying, "I can't do this anymore," the narcissist still doesn't believe you'll leave. Because they believe one thing: you're the one who never gives up. They've seen you forgive, not just once. They've seen you try to fix things, even when they were the one who broke it. They've seen you hold on to hope, even in the face of their cold indifference. And that made them think, you'll come back. You always come back. To a narcissist, every time you returned after being hurt, they didn't see love. They saw proof of control. They believed they still had power, that you still had feelings, still had hope, still could be pulled back into the same old cycle. So when you disappear, no words, no reactions, no need for dialogue or closure, they don't know how to process it. Their first thought isn't, "I lost someone who mattered." It's, "She's testing me, he's being silent to provoke a reaction. They're mad, they'll be back." They delay facing the truth by holding on to the same old pattern, the belief that you're not strong enough to leave for good. And they start waiting, but it's not the kind of waiting that comes from remorse. It's a silent arrogance laced with smugness. They think you're just playing hard to get. They believe that if they stay silent long enough, you won't be able to take it, and you will be the one to break the silence. What they don't realize is that you've changed. They don't know that what made you leave wasn't exhaustion, it was awakening. And when a super empath enters that state of awakening, every old rule becomes irrelevant. At that point, you no longer need an apology. You don't need them to admit they were wrong. You don't need closure, because you've seen the truth, and that truth hurt enough to ensure you'll never go back. And it's that steady silence, that lack of reaction, that absence of trying, that is the first thing that shatters the power structure the narcissist once built around you. For the first time, they feel powerless. For the first time, they are left alone in a silence they can't control. And in that silence, the fear begins to grow. A narcissist doesn't feel genuine connection. They don't love you the way you loved them. They love the feeling of controlling you. And what makes them feel powerful isn't your presence, it's your reaction. Every time you're sad, angry, hurt, or reaching out, they feel, I still have influence. But when you go silent, truly silent, to them, it's not just emptiness. It's a sign of collapse. When a super empath enters true no contact, not to manipulate but to heal, the narcissist loses all footing to stabilize their distorted ego. They begin to spiral. They check your social media daily, scanning for the tiniest signals, a sad quote, a nostalgic song, a vague caption. But there's nothing. All they see is peace without them. That's when panic sets in, but not in the way you might expect. There are no tearful phone calls, no heartfelt apologies. Instead, they respond with calculated provocation, posting fake happy pictures with a new supply, spinning the breakup narrative in their favor, even smearing your name behind your back. They need to declare one thing loud and clear. I was the one who left. I'm not hurt. I'm doing better. But underneath that mask is a growing anxiety, because for the first time, you're no longer engaging with them. No more reactions, no more playing the game. Every old trick becomes useless. They've lost the emotional response they were addicted to for so long. What's even scarier for them is that you're not just silent, you're recovering. They start to see you slowly returning to yourself, calmer, more focused, maybe even happier. You didn't just walk away, you broke free, emotionally and spiritually. And that sends them into a kind of panic they can't even admit to themselves. To a narcissist, you were an ideal reflection. Someone who made them feel lovable, special, forgivable. When you disappear, they don't just lose a person, they lose a compassionate mirror. One that helped them maintain the illusion that they never had to change, that they could still be loved despite all the harm they caused. And when your silence continues, when you don't come back to help repair the image they crafted, their mind begins to unravel. Without you, they no longer have a place to reflect themselves, and without that reflection, they no longer know who they are. That's when their deepest fear emerges, not the fear of losing you, but the fear of losing the illusion of the self they built from your love and forgiveness. A narcissist is used to a cycle, causing harm, offering half-hearted apologies, making empty promises to change, then causing harm again, and in that cycle, the super empath is often the one who forgives, who tries, who keeps hoping. This creates a quiet arrogance in the narcissist, the belief that you'll always be there, that your love has limits, but those limits can always be stretched. So when you choose complete silence and hold firm boundaries, the narcissist isn't just surprised, they feel betrayed in a way they can't control. They were used to your forgiveness. They were used to seeing you in pain, crying, arguing. To them, those reactions were proof that they still mattered. But now, you're no longer crying. You're no longer angry. You no longer even include them in your thoughts. And for them, that's the most brutal form of punishment, because it doesn't come from someone else. It comes from emptiness. In psychology, this is known as an unspeakable collapse. No one is blaming them, no one is condemning them, there's no one to argue with. And that's precisely why the narcissist has no one to shift blame onto, no one to unload the responsibility on. The biggest question starts to echo in their mind. If she's gone, if he's not here anymore, then who am I? They may find someone new, but the new person doesn't react like you did, doesn't carry your emotional depth, doesn't face them with the same wounded yet hopeful heart that you once had. The new person might be more agreeable, but they make the narcissist feel dull. Because what the narcissist truly needs isn't a new target, It's a strong enough mirror to help them keep believing they're still worthy. And that's exactly what the super empath unintentionally leaves behind after no contact. A void that no one else can fill. They may wear the mask of happiness, they may post smiling photos, but inside they begin to feel the unmistakable absence of the very realness you once brought. The feeling of being understood. The feeling of being seen. And now, it's all gone. Silence, to the narcissist, is no longer a tactic. It becomes a shattered mirror, one in which they no longer recognize themselves. No one's yelling at them, yet they feel condemned. No one's criticizing them, yet they feel as if they're collapsing in a courtroom with no defense, no witnesses. Only a truth they can no longer run from. And deep down, they know. No one ever stayed as long as you did, and no one will ever leave with the same calm, depth and finality as you did. One of the most brutal truths a narcissist has to face after no contact is that the real loss isn't of a lover. It's the loss of an audience for their performance. A narcissist doesn't love in the usual way. They love as a form of performance, a stage where they are always the star. They wear different masks, the seducer, the kind one, the victim, depending on the situation and their need for control. And you, the super empath, were the only one who saw both the stage and behind the scenes. You witnessed the moments they fell apart. You touched the deepest layers of pain they tried to hide. It made you more than just a lover. You were a witness to the version of themselves they wanted to believe was real. But when you left, quietly, without drama, without accusations, without turning back, the stage collapsed. There was no one left to manipulate with emotion, no one to blame, no one to serve as the backdrop for their false sense of virtue, and worst of all, no one left to believe in the better self they had tried to build through every promise, every tear, every plea for change. In psychology, this is known as ego collapse. But for a narcissist, it doesn't arrive as some enlightening moment. It comes as a slow, endless unraveling, where every day becomes a desperate attempt to reconstruct a self-image, even if only in their own eyes. They might throw themselves into new relationships. They might curate a fake life, build a public persona, even engage in charity work, all in an attempt to tell themselves, I still have value, but without you, the one who saw both their light and darkness, they no longer know who they are. This is when they begin to feel a terrifying truth. Maybe I'm no one at all. And that's not something they can ever admit to anyone, because their entire world was built on a lie, that they were always okay, always the victim or the victor. Now the silent truth you left behind gives them no choice but to face themselves. And that is why no contact isn't just an absence. It's the end of a script. A powerful withdrawal that leaves the narcissist with no more roles to play and no one left watching to keep the illusion alive. When a super empath chooses no contact, it's not just about ending communication. To the narcissist, it's a silent sentence, one that doesn't follow a timeline, but lingers in their mind like a shadow that never fades. A narcissist feeds on emotional responses. They cannot exist in a state of being ignored. Silence doesn't just strip them of control, it activates their most primal fear, being forgotten. When you, someone who once gave love, forgiveness, and patience, suddenly become completely silent, they no longer have anything to lean on to define themselves. This marks the beginning of a long obsessive psychological pattern for the narcissist. They start watching you from a distance. They read every word you post, analyze every photo you share, trying to decode hidden meanings in every detail. They search for signs that you still think about them, still feel hurt, still carry anger, because that means they still have power. But when they find nothing, when you shine in your silence, heal and move forward, that wounds them more than any accusation ever could. Why? Because silence from someone who once loved you is the clearest proof that You no longer matter. To a narcissist, that is unacceptable. In their framework, people only exist to serve their sense of power, admiration, or redemption. The fact that you choose not to text, not to accuse, not to seek closure or explanation shatters their entire logic about your role in their life. Because in their mind, you were the weak one, the over-emotional one, the one who always came back. But now, you're not coming back. You're not arguing. You don't need them. And that is the punishment that crushes them day by day. They might pretend to be happy. They might show off how they've moved on. But deep down, they know no one ever saw them as clearly as you did. No one ever loved them as deeply. And no one ever forgave them as much. When you walk away asking for nothing, no apology, no explanation, no validation, you take with you the one thing they can never recreate, someone who truly saw them and still chose to love. And in that silence, one truth rings out like a final judgment bell. They lost the most precious thing they ever had, and they will never have it again. To a narcissist, nothing is ever gone forever. In their mind, every relationship is a cycle, a push and pull game they always believe they'll win. They might let you walk away, but deep down they never truly believe you'll be gone for good. They believe you'll come back, not because they deserve it, but because they've grown too used to you loving them despite everything. However, when a super empath chooses no contact, fully and decisively, the narcissist begins to face a reality they were never prepared for. This time, it's real. No more hesitant messages, no more eyes filled with hope, no more doors left slightly open for them to sneak back in and restart the game. At first, they deny it. They think you're just punishing them, that you're waiting for a sign to return. But then the days pass in silence. No reaction, no messages, no signs of regret. And that's when the unthinkable begins to settle clearly in their mind. You're not coming back. It's not just a loss, it's the collapse of an illusion that they still held your heart, that you were still waiting for them to change. When there's no one on the other end waiting anymore, the narcissist doesn't just feel empty, they feel invisible. No audience, no stage, no reflection, no ego to stand on. They may try to replace you with someone else. They may dive into new relationships, reenact emotional performances. But deep down they know no one is you. No one loved them with the same sincerity and patience you did. No one was brave enough to see the chaos within them and still hold it with gentleness. Because of that, they begin to compare, not out loud, not in confession, but in every quiet moment they recall how you used to make them feel worthy. And then they realize the most terrifying truth. They don't miss the joy you brought. They miss the way you made them believe they were lovable. When you vanished, that sense of worth vanished with you. You're no longer the one reacting to their rage, no longer the one trying to understand emotions they couldn't even explain themselves. You're no longer the mirror reflecting the image they needed to maintain a sense of existence. And when that mirror disappears, they're forced to face themselves, and what's inside is only a terrifying void. What hurts them the most isn't your absence from their world, it's their absence from yours. No accusations, no tears demanding justice, just a silent strength, like a psychological sentence they can never escape. That is the final punishment, not one you delivered, but one they brought upon themselves. And what haunts them isn't that you left, it's the undeniable truth that you will never come back. When a super empath walks away from a toxic relationship and holds firm to no contact, it's not just a departure, it's a rebirth. No drama, no declarations, just a quiet journey back to themselves, where truth, self-respect, and self-love begin to rise again. To the narcissist, this is the part they will never understand. because they view every withdrawal as a tactic, not an awakening. They believe you're playing the strong role, that you're still watching them, that you're still hurt and secretly waiting for something. They cannot accept the truth that you've fully let go, and that's what triggers their deep internal panic, because the super empath doesn't just walk away, they walk away in peace, without needing an apology, without needing to win, without needing anyone to witness it for validation. That silence isn't avoidance. It's the mark of a soul that has begun to heal. While the narcissist is still chasing new reflections and fresh performances, the super empath is taking the time to look straight at the wounds that were once ignored. They're not rushing to fill the void with someone else. They're not eager to prove anything. Instead, they face themselves. With rare courage and radical honesty, they learn to love without losing themselves. They learn to say no without guilt. They learn to set boundaries, not to punish, but to protect their inner peace. And above all, they learn that they don't need to be loved in order to feel worthy. They become their own source of validation, love, and deep gratitude for the person they've become. This leaves the narcissist with no doorway back, no emotions to manipulate, no pity to exploit, no memories to stir up that would make the super empath flinch. Because now, the memories are no longer chains, they've become lessons, and those lessons have been learned, not to be repeated. In the narcissist's heart, this is the greatest failure. Not because they lost you, but because you've become a version of yourself they can no longer control. You saw them clearly, and still chose to leave. And the most painful truth for them is, you didn't stay away out of hatred, but because you outgrew them. And that growth, that peace, that clarity, that is something the narcissist can never reach because it doesn't come from outside. It comes from having gone through the pain, not avoiding it, not denying it, but turning it into the foundation for rebirth. This is the silent yet complete victory of a super empath. No reactions needed, no proof required, just the quiet continuation of a journey with a whole heart, clear eyes, and an unshakable belief that you deserve a love that never asks you to bleed to earn it. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do isn't to fight back. It's not to speak up. It's not to prove you're right. It's to walk away in silence. Silence doesn't mean you have nothing left to say. It means there's nothing left worth repeating. No reaction needed, no explanations, no need for validation from someone who never truly saw you. And in that silence, the super empath enters a new chapter of life, a chapter of freedom, awakening, and deep, lasting peace. The narcissist will never admit it, but they feel it deeply. You were the only one who ever truly saw them, and still loved them, despite the pain. But when you left without blame, without a sign of waiting, that's when they were forced to face the thing they feared most, the truth. You're no longer their supply. You're no longer a character in their game. You're no longer the savior, the victim, or the one who endured. Now you are simply yourself, whole, grounded, and no longer willing to sacrifice who you are just to be loved. The most beautiful thing about a super empath isn't their unconditional compassion. It's their ability to know when to stop. They know when kindness becomes a trap, and they have the courage to let go, not because they're weak, but because they've learned to love themselves deeply enough not to accept being hurt one more time. If you're on this journey, the journey of awakening, of cutting toxic cords and returning to yourself, know this: you are not alone. There are millions just like you. People who once loved too much, forgave too much, and are now learning to put themselves first. Don't let anyone make you doubt your decision. Don't let anyone convince you that loving yourself is selfish, because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for this world is to become someone no longer driven by pain. And if you ever thought that silence is weakness, remember, there is a kind of silence born from strength. A silence that doesn't avoid, it declares. A silence that doesn't carry fear, it carries clarity. A silence that isn't meant to change others, but to set you free. Hold on to that freedom. Keep walking. There's no need to look back. You didn't just leave a relationship. You came home to yourself.